Here's just another video showing the top of the stove as I have it currently laid out with all the slate lintel things. So I was mentioning in the last segment that there are some areas of expansion gap that are bigger than I would like them to be. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find a clever way to fill this gap where you can see the underlying stovetop without putting something in direct contact with it. So I may pack this with copper wool, and same with that gap. Or I may put down like a little layer of cob and go, halfway up this slate with a little pad of cob, and then put some copper wool on top of it, and then continue building the superstructure on top of that. Not sure yet, but yeah, I'll have to figure something out for that. And then the other thing I wanted to cover is, so I've got these, these diagonal lintels, pieces of slate there, but there's still this gap down the back. So I will be packing that with cob as well. I'll probably pack that with a cob that doesn't have any hay or straw in it. That hay or straw can add a little bit of insulation value, which is counter to the point of this, right? You want thermal conductivity into your thermal mass, not insulation. You're not trying to insulate the stove from the thermal mass. You're trying to get them in direct conductive contact with each other as closely as possible. So I will forego the addition of straw or hay into the cob mix that I packed down the back there. The real reason to include that, some kind of natural fiber into your cob mix or your adobe mix, is to add that crack resistance, flexural strength stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack this full of fiber reinforced cob, and then I'm gonna fire the entire stove. I'm gonna have a hot fire in the stove and let this stuff that I packed down the back there crack. And only after that's kind of cracked and I've seen where the cracks are, will I then build the rest of the dome over the entire top of this with a fiber reinforced cob. That will hopefully obscure any cracking that goes on back in those sections so that you don't see it. And then I might lime plaster the entire dome, or at the very least I'll lime wash it. But I may lime plaster it with a skim coat of lime plaster. The other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot in the previous segment was, so I'm going to have cob in direct contact with the cement blocks here, and on the front leading edge, and on that side there. So in order to help them adhere together, because they're kind of different materials and they probably have different rates of expansion and things like that, I will probably put some stainless steel masonry screws, staggered, a handful of them, onto all the surfaces that will be touched by cob to add more of a grip for the cob to hook into. In the UK, they typically call that a key, a mechanical key. Add more of a mechanical key to the surface of these blocks. And then right before I actually start packing the cob onto this thing, I will probably slather the faces after they already have the stainless steel masonry screws in them. I'll also slather the entire surface with a slurry of either hydraulic lime or possibly cement that will help the cob to really bond to the cement blocks, so that they're all kind of one contiguous mass that will hopefully move together and expand together at the same rate. And then the front of the hearth will still be exposed. The only part of the hearth you're going to see is like from there to about there. You'll just have a little section in the front. And then, oh yeah, the other thing is, so obviously in order to have a hot, clean fire, you need to have good air intakes. So this particular stove, which is called the Hobbit Eco version of the Hobbit stove. This has actually 3 air intakes. It has one air intake on the very front of the stove, which is opened by unscrewing that. That draws air in through that front plate. But then underneath, it has these 2 movable lever arms. So the air intakes that are controlled by these lever arms are at the back of the stove. They're on the other side. And so obviously this entire thing is all going to be covered with cob, but this front won't be. And so air can be drawn under the stove. And by opening these, it opens the vents at the back of the stove. And so air will be drawn under the stove. It should get hopefully preheated on its way under the hot stove. And then it'll come up the back and into the air vents. The air vents are not, they're protected from being clogged up by masonry, by the design of the stove. Actually, the vents are kind of behind a plate that points down. So, and then the cement block I put behind there is behind that. So no cob or anything is going to clog up those vents. So hopefully the air will just get drawn in underneath the stove, up into the vents, and then piped into the actual burn box chamber there. And so the way you typically use a masonry stove is you load the entire stove box up, you open all your vents to the maximum, and you torch the fire as hot as it can go. You typically build a top-down fire, and you burn the wood from the top down, which improves the cleanliness of the burn and the efficiency of the burn. And you try to maximize the heat output and burn it as hot as it'll go, as opposed to when you don't have a masonry stove and all you've got is a standalone wood burner. You're always trying to damp the stove down and get the burn to slow down so that you don't use so much fuel and don't send so much heat right up the chimney and be wasteful of your wood, and also so that you don't overheat the room. This solves that problem by allowing the excess heat to get dumped into this thermal mass heat battery, basically, that surrounds the stove. And so you can now burn your wood as hot as it'll go, which makes it a cleaner burn, which keeps your flue cleaner and free from creosote, which means it's a safer burn as well. And then you get the benefit of all that heat that's been absorbed into the masonry radiating out into the room gradually over the next, I'm hoping it'll last for 8 hours, because I have an 8-hour work day. So the way I would like it to work is I come in the morning, 9 o'clock, preferably I've already laid up a fire from the night before. All I do is I come in the morning, first thing, open the door, strike a match, light the fire from the top, shut it, open all the vents to the max, let the whole thing burn as hot as it'll burn, and then let it go out. And then as soon as it's basically gotten down to embers, then you shut all of your vents and you seal it off. At that point, you don't need any more oxygen input into the fire because all the flame has burned out, and now all you've got is just, embers or coals. So at that point, you shut all of your air intakes to stop the loss of heat by continued drafting through the stove and up and out of the chimney. You want to shut everything down so that all the heat that's now packed into this masonry is not getting sucked out by cold air continually coming in, even though the fire is out. So that's the protocol. And then I've calculated, I think, for the amount of masonry I'm going to be able to pack around this thing, I'm thinking I should get about 600 pounds of masonry basically in and around this hearth footprint. So 600 pounds of masonry, I'm hoping, will store heat enough to keep this room comfortable for the 8-hour workday, so that I only need to burn a single box full of wood at the beginning of the day. All right, thanks. See you in the next one. Bye.